Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into something a little different. You're not heading into a battlefield, or at least not in the traditional sense. No swords, no knights, no crusades. Just you, a loosely stitched tunic, and about 50 other men fueled by wine, pride, and an ancient grudge that no one quite remembers the origin of. Welcome to the chaos of Renaissance football. Calcio storico, they called it. A game so violent it was once banned by the Pope, and so beloved it kept coming back like a bruised, toothless phoenix. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where and when you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not even fully awake when you hear them, the church bells, but they're not marking mass. They're louder than usual, sharper somehow, almost like war drums in disguise. Through your cracked window, you hear shouting, hooves on cobblestone, the deep growl of drums echoing off stone walls. Outside, the sleepy Italian sun is just starting to warm the tiled roofs of Florence. Your landlord bangs on your door. Get dressed. They'll draft you if you don't show up, and they will find you. You blink. Draft? For what? By the time you make it into the town square, you already regret waking up. The crowd is swelling like a living organism. Nobles in feathered hats and long robes lean over balconies, goblets already in hand. Market stalls have been cleared out, replaced by makeshift wooden bleachers and piles of hay. A trumpet blasts. A horn answers. Somewhere a goat screams. You're handed a team tunic, blue, barely stitched. It smells like someone already lost a lung in it. Then you see the field. Or rather, what passes for one. It's a dirt rectangle, framed by canvas barriers and a lot of angry men. 2 goals, if you can call them that. Just nets, stretched across wooden frames. There's dust, heat, and already a bit of blood on the stones. Welcome to Calcio Storico. You don't remember volunteering, but that doesn't seem to matter. Some guy with 3 missing teeth grabs your arm and mutters, "You'll be striker. Just don't die." You nod, as if that makes sense. Around you, the players size each other up. Some look like blacksmiths. Others look like escaped convicts. One guy might be both. Everyone has scars. Everyone's barefoot. Your heart's racing, but not because of nerves. It's the smell. Dust, sweat, and cured meats. A sensory cocktail of Renaissance Florence. A flag drops. The game starts. You're instantly shoved to the ground. A foot lands near your face. You hear shouting in dialects you don't recognize. The ball, rough, pigskin leather, flies past, followed by 6 men brawling like drunk bears. You scramble up. Someone tries to punch you. You duck and grab a handful of tunic that may or may not be clean. Historians still argue whether this was meant to be a sport. You hear someone laugh as they shove you into a barrel. Or just a socially sanctioned riot. You try to focus. One fact you do recall. Calcio wasn't just chaos. It was tied to city identity. A performance of civic pride. Winning wasn't just about points. It was about honor. And losing? Well, let's just say some families didn't talk to each other for a generation. You see the ball. You run. You almost touch it. Someone body slams you. Hard. You gasp on the ground, looking up at a sky so blue it feels sarcastic. Then you hear a little boy from the sidelines yell, "Mama, that one's crying." You are. just a bit. The match doesn't stop. Time is abstract here. The pain is not. Someone in the crowd throws a roasted chestnut at a player's head. It lands in your lap. You eat it. You're not proud. And in that moment of salty sweetness, you realize this isn't just sport. This is theater, blood, politics, and a weird sense of community, all rolled into one bruising, breathless performance. You get back on your feet, though barely. Your knees feel like someone swapped them for jars of old beans. And still, you press forward, because the ball is in play again, and apparently, so are you. You're handed something by a teammate. At first, you think it's water. It's not. It's wine. Thick, spiced, room temperature. For strength, he says with a wink, then slaps your back so hard you taste your own heartbeat. The cup vanishes as fast as it arrived. You stumble forward, fueled more by confusion than courage, and then you hear it, the crack of bones. Not yours this time. A player from the red team just went down. A butcher, judging by his apron, still wearing it. He's howling. The crowd cheers. No whistles. No stretcher. Just a few teammates dragging him to the side and stuffing a fig in his mouth. You start to panic. This can't be normal. But it is. Because here's the thing. In Renaissance Calcio, there were no real rules. No padding, no penalty boxes, no sense of proportion. Players could punch, kick, grapple, anything short of murder. And even that, well, historians still argue whether a few deaths were quietly swept under the Medici rug. You look down at yourself. Bare feet, a tunic made of glorified curtain fabric, no armor. You're one unlucky elbow away from a permanent limp. And you're surrounded by men who look like they sharpen their teeth for fun. You try to remember the objective. It's not just to score. It's to get the ball across the opposing line into the goal. Sounds simple. It's not. The ball is only in play maybe 10% of the time. The rest? Fighting. Organized, chaotic, beautifully choreographed brawling. That's calcio. Across the square, you see a man cartwheeling into the fray. He's not playing. He's an entertainer? No, he's just very, very drunk. A group of spectators starts cheering his name. Someone throws him a chicken leg. He eats it mid-spin. This is fine. Everything is fine. You spot a familiar face, a merchant you once saw haggling over cinnamon. He's now grappling a man twice his size, teeth bared. You vaguely recall he once gave you a discount on parchment. Now he looks like he'd happily staple you to a goat. The noise is unbelievable. People screaming, bells ringing, tambourines clattering. You swear you hear a lute solo somewhere in the madness. Your ears buzz from the sheer volume. A child on the sidelines yells, "Hit him in the pancreas." You're not even sure where that is, anatomically. You find yourself running again, mostly out of muscle memory. Someone grabs your shoulder, yanks you down, then grins and helps you back up. "Good fall," he says, like a compliment. You thank him, sincerely. He then knees you in the thigh and runs off. This sport was supposedly invented to keep soldiers in shape during peacetime. But you suspect it was also to keep physicians employed and the gravediggers fluent in poetry. And then, out of nowhere, the ball comes hurtling toward you. You catch it. Time slows. You clutch the pigskin lump like a newborn. Your teammates are screaming. Or maybe the other team is. Either way, there's movement. Fast, heavy, unstoppable. You try to run. You make it 3 steps before a wall of humanity collides with you. Arms wrap around your waist. Another pair grabs your leg. and someone is inexplicably yelling about lentils. You hit the ground, still holding the ball, but now you're under at least 5 angry men. You can't breathe. Dirt fills your nose. A hand, hopefully human, presses against your cheek. You cough, sputter, kick. Somehow, miraculously, you crawl out of the pile. You don't know who has the ball now. You don't care. Your brain is too busy reminding your ribs to behave like ribs and not marshmallows. From the sidelines, a noble in a peacock-feathered hat yells, "That was glorious." He's holding a dog that looks equally drunk. You nod weakly at both of them. The crowd roars again. A goal? No. Someone just did a backflip after being punched. Style points. This isn't just a sport, it's pageantry. A release valve for civic tension. A ritualized explosion of masculinity and wine-stained violence. And you? You're just trying not to die. There's a lull in the chaos. 10 seconds of relative calm. You use it to wipe your face with your sleeve. Bad idea. It smells like old ham. Your team regroups. One of them, a carpenter with a missing ear, leans in and says, "Keep your elbows high. Aim for the collarbone. And if you go down, pretend to be dead until they get bored." You don't question the wisdom. Back in formation, you look around. It's not just a match. It's a performance for the city. Nobles, artisans, merchants, all eyes on the field. It's their soap opera, their therapy session. And for you, it's a living fever dream in broad daylight. The sun climbs higher. Your limbs feel heavier. Your stomach growls. The wine you drank earlier isn't sitting well. You see a chicken escape from the sidelines and get tackled by a player. The crowd cheers louder for that than for the last actual goal. You try to smile, but your lips are swollen. You try to stand taller, but your back is screaming. And yet, deep inside, a bizarre pride simmers, because you're still in the game. If you're here, it means you're ready to slow down. And tonight, we're heading back to the Renaissance together. You're panting now, not from running, but from staying alive. Calcio storico isn't a match, it's a siege, and you're both attacker and wall. You stand half-dazed in the dust, sweat soaking your tunic, wondering how your ancestors survived anything, if this is what they did for fun. Another trumpet sounds. You flinch. Natural, since the last trumpet blast was immediately followed by someone throwing a brick. But this one signals something else. The officials are walking in. Or rather, stumbling in. You look toward the makeshift sidelines where a group of elderly men in velvet hats are forming a haphazard row. These are the judges, apparently. They carry scrolls and wine goblets, not whistles. One of them is definitely asleep. Another is gesturing wildly with a turkey leg. Are they officiating? Arguing? Planning dinner? You learn quickly that there are no referees in the modern sense, no impartial observers keeping the peace. The men judging this game are former players, current nobles, and possibly a retired baker who just really likes yelling. Decisions are made by vote, or bribe, or whim. You watch as one player openly pays off a judge with a loaf of bread and a wink. The judge nods solemnly and turns away, just as the bribing player slams someone into a cart of melons. You realize you're not just playing against another team. You're playing against a system built on favoritism, social alliances, and who owns which vineyard. Historians still argue whether this lack of enforcement made Calcio more democratic or more dangerous. It feels like both. A teammate slaps your back and says, "Don't worry." If the judges don't see it, it's legal. You want to ask what happens if they do see it, but he's already running toward a man with an axe tattooed on his face. You take a moment to reassess. You are currently bruised in 7 distinct places, wearing a tunic that's now mostly red, from wine, blood, tomato sauce. Not entirely sure where the ball is. You look around frantically. Is it under someone? Over the canvas fence? In someone's tunic? A goat bleats nearby. You briefly consider if the ball has somehow become the goat. Then someone shouts, "He's got it!" And you spot the butcher from earlier, miraculously recovered, tucking the ball under his arm and charging like a cannonball toward the opposite goal. You join the chase. Dust clouds rise. Bodies collide. It's less like a soccer game and more like Black Friday at a Renaissance butcher shop. You manage to shove someone out of your way, only for that someone to spin and grin at you with the most enthusiastic black eye you've ever seen. "Good push," he shouts. There's something oddly addictive about this. The total absence of decorum. The sense that any moment could erupt into celebration or dental tragedy. The crowd is no help. They're equally divided between gasping, cheering, and arguing over whose cousin married whose cousin last year. You reach the ball carrier just as he trips, sending the ball rolling into open ground. You dive for it. So does someone else. Your heads collide. You both go down, wheezing, limbs tangled. You lie there for a moment, side by side. "Nice effort," the stranger wheezes. You nod. Then both of you crawl back to your feet, like middle-aged dads after a wedding dance. As you hobble back into formation, someone passes you a wineskin. You take a sip. It's strong. Possibly also a cleaning solvent. You feel slightly more alive. Then you hear your name being chanted. The crowd is chanting your name. Or something close to your name. It might also be an insult. You're not fluent in Tuscan dialect. Still, the attention is oddly energizing. You raise your arms to acknowledge the crowd and immediately get tackled from behind. While on the ground, you spot something odd. A monk in the front row, cheering wildly and shaking a small incense burner like a maraca. He's wearing a red scarf, which means he's supporting your team. That counts for something, right? You roll over just in time to see a man dressed in full noble regalia toss a handful of coins onto the field. "Next goal gets it," he yells. Suddenly, everyone is faster. You are stepped on by someone whose foot feels like it's made of granite. And yet, this all feels almost normal now. The pain is familiar. The noise is comforting. The game, for all its madness, has rhythm. Rules written in bruises. You see the ball again. You try to get to it. You don't, but you try. And that seems to be enough for now. Because in this version of sport, effort counts. Participation is survival. And if you're still standing, you're winning. You come to your senses next to a wooden cart that smells suspiciously like pickled eel. Someone, maybe a fan, maybe a very confused vendor, dabs your forehead with a rag that is definitely not clean. You thank them anyway. Gratitude is free. Hygiene, not so much. Back on your feet, you notice the ball again. It's just sitting there, rolling lazily in a puff of dust, completely ignored as a full-on brawl erupts 20 feet away. 6 men are fighting, but not for the ball. No, they're just fighting. One's lost a shoe. Another is wielding a cured sausage like a mace. You begin to understand. The ball is a formality. You shuffle toward it cautiously, as if it might explode. Your fingers brush the leather. And then, impact. You're on your back again. A shadow looms above you. "Sorry," says the player who knocked you over, adjusting his hat like this was a casual bump on a Sunday walk. He offers a hand. You take it. Your shoulder pops. He grins. You're learning. This is calcio storico. No pads, no helmets. Just men, linen, and a complete disregard for long-term spinal health. You stumble forward, legs jelly. You're starting to realize something unsettling. You're enjoying this. The pain has dulled into a background hum, like a lute being strummed by a lazy ghost. The crowd noise, once overwhelming, now lulls like ocean waves. You recognize your team's butcher, arm in arm with a stonemason from the other team, laughing like old friends. Weren't they just fighting? Probably. But that's part of the ritual. Violence, followed by sudden fraternity. A sudden horn blast snaps your head around. The Medici? No, not those Medici, but still nobles of some sort, have stood up. They're calling for a pause. You sigh in relief. Then they announce, time for the scoppio del centro. Restart with force. What? You're herded with the others to the center of the square. The ball is placed carefully on a stone. You're confused until you hear the words again. Scoppio. Explosion. Great. It's tradition, apparently. Restart the match with both teams charging toward the ball, simultaneously, from opposite ends. This is not a play. It's a human avalanche. You are pushed into position. The man beside you, missing a few front teeth and sanity, gives you a hearty pat on the back and says, lean forward when you run. Less risk of getting flipped. You don't ask how he knows that. You just nod and clench your fists. A cannon fires. You run. You run like your life depends on it. Because honestly, it does. Dust explodes around you. The earth shakes with the stampede. You glimpse the opposing team hurtling toward you. It's like watching a wave of humanity crest right before it crushes a fishing boat. You're a fishing boat. Impact. Bodies crash. Grunts and yells echo around you. Somewhere, someone's singing. You don't know where you are anymore. Just that you're under someone, and someone's under you, and your left foot has gone rogue. Eventually, you crawl out. Somehow, miraculously, the ball has popped free. It rolls to a stop next to an old man who looks down at it, then kicks it gently back into play. You dive for it, grasping the now dust-slick surface, and for once, you keep it. You run, hobbling, zigzagging, ducking a flying shoe, and what you think is a turnip. You make it 3/4 down the field, and then a sound, half shriek, half cheer, erupts. You look over. A woman in a red velvet gown, watching from a balcony, has thrown her scarf into the air. The crowd erupts with a cry. Benedetta chooses a hero. Apparently, you're the hero. Or maybe the next target. The scarf lands on your shoulder like a knight's favor. Your teammates cheer. The other team speeds up. You wish she had picked someone else. This part is real, by the way. Historians still argue whether noble women chose favorites to honor or humiliate them, depending on whether you caught the scarf before or after being tackled into unconsciousness. The scarf gives you a burst of energy. You push forward. The goal is in sight now. A sagging net framed between two columns. You're nearly there, and then you trip, flat out. Your face hits the dirt. The ball rolls gently past the goal line. Not kicked, not thrown, just rolled, sad and slow, like it gave up on you too. But a goal is a goal. The crowd explodes. Horns blast. The drum starts beating wildly. Coins are tossed. Wine is spilled. Someone faints. Your teammates hoist you up and carry you, not exactly gently, toward the sideline. You did it, one yells, before dropping you and running back in to fight someone else. You lie there, dazed. The woman from the balcony is clapping. Her scarf is still tangled in your fingers. You grin. Bloody, dusty, delirious. You grin. Then someone leans over you. The town physician. The same guy who played goalie earlier. "Don't pass out," he says. "We still need you for the second half." Second? Half? You close your eyes. Just for a second. How's the weather been lately where you are? Has it been helping you sleep better or making it harder? You wake up to the unmistakable sensation of being doused with something cold, wet, and herbal. Your eyes blink open to the face of a grinning elderly woman holding a bucket and what looks like a bunch of rosemary. "It's for the joints," she cackles. Yours sounded like they were rebelling. The halftime rest period, if you can call it that, is less of a break and more of a medieval triage festival. You sit propped up against a barrel, surrounded by men icing their ankles with cheese wheels and getting their shoulders reset by what you hope are trained professionals. Judging by the screams, they're not. A man walks by with a tray of fig wine. You grab a cup. It tastes like regret and victory. You don't care. You drink it like medicine, because in Renaissance Florence, it was. You glance around. The square is a whirlwind of activity. Musicians tune their instruments. A street performer juggles flaming sticks dangerously close to your team's goalie. Town criers shout out the current score, though it's hard to say whether they're making it up. One says 3-2. Another says 5-5. A third simply shouts, "Everyone's winning," and gets a hearty cheer. And there's the mayor, standing on a raised platform, giving a speech that's part blessing, part roast. You only catch fragments. Something about glory, masculine virtue, and not letting the rival city-state laugh at us again. He ends by chucking a chicken leg into the crowd. It's caught mid-air by a man missing an ear. He roars triumphantly. Someone is patching up your knee. You look down to see that the bandage is a strip of someone's tunic. "Stolen from the other team," the medic says proudly. You nod. That feels symbolic somehow. Then a curious sound interrupts the chaos. Singing. Not drunk, chanting or cheering. Real singing. A group of local women, wrapped in crimson shawls and golden pins, start a halftime hymn from one of the balconies. Their voices float above the square like birds made of honey. For a moment, the noise softens. Even the players listen. Even the goats. It's beautiful. And then someone farts loudly, and the spell breaks. You glance around and spot the town's apothecary selling performance enhancers out of a basket. Tiny scrolls promising speed, strength, or protection. One says it's made from crushed beetles. Another claims divine approval from St. Cosmas, patron of bruises, unofficially. You buy one. You don't even read which. You eat it like a communion wafer and pray it doesn't give you visions. Your captain approaches, limping but smiling. "We're up by 1, he says, handing you a fresh headband. "Or maybe down by 2. Either way, let's make 'em bleed. In the metaphorical sense, of course." You nod solemnly. You feel like a knight preparing for a joust, or a chicken being prepared for stew. The crowd is louder now. The sun has moved slightly, casting long shadows across the square. Vendors yell out their remaining wares. A child offers you a flower for luck. You take it, tuck it behind your ear. It feels ridiculous. It feels right. Historians still debate whether these halftime rituals were strategic or just theatrical distractions, you recall, as a man with a painted face recites an epic poem about toenails. Probably both. You begin stretching again, not because you expect it to help, but because it makes you look like you know what you're doing. Another player joins you. He hands you a boiled egg. You eat it in silence. Then comes the announcement. Return to the field. It's not a trumpet this time, but a woman with an enormous voice and a massive bell. Everyone groans. Joints crack. Men limp toward the starting line again like soldiers going back to war. You're back in formation. Across from you, the opposing team now sports new scarves, fresh bandages, and a terrifying look of coordination. One of them even smiles and waves. It's a friendly smile. That somehow makes it worse. You look around at your team. Exhausted, stained, a bit drunk, all heart. You realize something. These aren't just players. They're survivors of life, of poverty, of politics, of games just like this one. You stand taller. Then someone behind you burps loudly and says, "Sorry, Figs." The woman with the bell shouts, "Second half begins." You breathe in. Smell of sweat, figs, rosemary, cheese, and maybe panic. The ball is thrown into the center again. You run. The first hit catches you by surprise. You stumble, but stay upright. Your legs move out of pure habit. Everything around you is chaos once more. Hands grabbing, voices yelling, bodies slamming into each other like waves against a stone wall. You reach the ball. You kick it forward. It doesn't go far, but it's enough. A teammate picks it up. The crowd roars. And as you turn to defend him, you finally understand. This match isn't about goals or glory. It's about grit, and maybe figs. The second half hits different. Literally. The hits are harder. The footing is worse. And everyone's just a little drunker, yourself included. You stagger like a marionette with loose strings, limbs responding to commands you don't remember issuing. But there's no room for hesitation now. The ball is in play. The sun is glaring, and someone's already bleeding again. You press forward, sticking close to your teammates, who now seem to be communicating through a language of grunts, gestures, and aggressive eyebrow raises. Someone points to the left. You lurch that way. Another player smacks the back of your head and yells, "No, your other left." The game has devolved into something less like football and more like a living Renaissance painting of chaos. Elbows fly, tunics rip, and someone is playing a flute aggressively from the sidelines. You duck just in time to avoid a flying elbow from a man you recognize as your team's cobbler. He mouths a quick apology, then gets tackled by someone who looks suspiciously like a tax collector. The match doesn't just pit neighborhoods against each other. It pits professions, grudges, and families with 5 generations of "you owe me a goose" tension. Calcio storico wasn't a single sport. It was a reflection of the city. Historians still argue whether its primary function was civic unity or controlled anarchy. Watching the melee around you, you're starting to believe it was both. The crowd, somehow, is even louder. One section is throwing flower petals. Another is throwing olives. You get hit in the eye with one. It stings. You're offered wine as a form of medical attention. You accept. You hear a name chanted in waves. Bruno. 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 You look around. It's not you. It's a butcher who just did a spinning tackle that knocked 3 people over. He waves at the crowd, modestly lifting his apron like a courtier showing off his embroidery. He then looks directly at you and mouths, "You're next." Great. You do the only logical thing. You turn and run. But the field is a minefield of debris. Fruit skins, dropped hats, one actual duck, and you don't make it far before slipping. Your fall is dramatic. You sprawl, arms wide, and stay down just long enough for someone to drape a banner over you as if assuming you've expired. You peel it off and roll away, dignity dragging behind you like a broken cartwheel. The ball reappears again. It always does, like a curse. It rolls near your feet. You pick it up and immediately get swarmed. 3 men descend on you like a pack of feral librarians overdue for a brawl. You curl around the ball like a hedgehog, absorbing kicks, grunts, and the smell of someone who clearly skipped their morning rosemary rinse. A whistle blows. Wait, a whistle? You look up. A man in priest's robes has stepped onto the field, arms raised. He's not technically a referee. He's just had enough. "This is sacred ground," he cries. Everyone pauses. Then someone throws a salami at him. The match resumes. You claw your way to your feet and hurl the ball to a teammate who immediately fumbles it. No matter. The crowd loves it. You've given them what they came for, a spectacle. As the game rages on, you start to notice odd details. A noble in the front row is taking notes, possibly for a poem, possibly for blackmail. A vendor sells candied walnuts shaped like famous players' noses. 2 small children reenact your fall with disturbingly accurate sound effects. One woman stands at the edge of the fence, holding a carved wooden spoon like a weapon, shouting advice in a tone that suggests she's been waiting all year for this. Your team regroups, forming a loose formation. You're pulled into a huddle. The strategy is simple. Push. Yell. Pretend to pass out if cornered. You nod. Perfect. Back in the fray, you feel the pulse of the city itself. Florence isn't just watching. You are Florence now. Covered in bruises and dirt, holding a sport together with sweat and string. You shoulder your way forward again, trying to break through the line. You feel the ball underfoot. Kick once, twice. A clear shot to the goal. You take it. The ball soars. It hits a man in the face. The wrong man. The crowd goes silent, then erupts into laughter. Even he laughs. Blood in his teeth, joy in his eyes. You get hoisted again by teammates. "That's the best shot we've seen in hours," someone shouts. "Didn't even hit the net." You grin. Not because you missed, but because you're still here. Still playing. Still standing. Still surviving this glorious disaster of a game. Are you tucked in? Close your eyes for a bit. We're about to wander back through time together. Your feet ache like they've been replaced with sacks of gravel. Every step is a negotiation between ambition and anatomy. Still, you limp back into the square, shoulder to shoulder with your team. The ground is a mess now. Trampled dirt, broken sandals, some unidentifiable stew-like substance someone spilled during a particularly vicious tackle. And here's the worst part. There's no break in the madness. Calcio storico doesn't have timeouts. No orange slices. No sideline pep talks. Just relentless motion. Like a civic storm designed to blow all your common sense out through your ears. The crowd begins to chant again. Only this time, it's not a name. It's, "Watch the fountain." You turn, puzzled, and then you see it. One of the players, shirtless now, his tunic long since sacrificed to the gods of friction burn, has climbed up the central fountain in the piazza. He's holding the ball above his head like a gladiator holding a severed head. Water cascades around him. The crowd goes wild. Is this legal? Historians still argue whether spontaneous displays like this were considered part of the strategy or just tolerated acts of performance, you recall, as he hurls the ball down into the melee like Zeus delivering a lesson in humility. The ball bounces once, twice, and lands near your foot. And so begins your next challenge, navigating the scenery. Calcio storico isn't played on a pristine field. It's played wherever it fits, which, today, means the cobbled, shop-lined chaos of the city's central square. Statues, stalls, the occasional merchant who refused to pack up. You sidestep a stack of firewood and nearly trip on a loot. You duck behind a crumbling marble column, using it for cover, like a war movie extra. A chicken bolts past your ankles. Someone chases it. Unclear if they're playing or just hungry. You push forward, ball cradled, like it's the last loaf of bread in a famine. A pottery stand looms ahead, somehow still standing. The vendor locks eyes with you, gives a slight nod, and kicks a crate in front of your path. You hop over it, land awkwardly, and keep running. Civilians are now part of the game. Not spectators, obstacles. A butcher lunges toward you from behind a cart of cured meats. You spin, dodge, and hear a slap as he collides with a hanging salami. Somewhere, a child screams with delight. You might have just invented Renaissance parkour. A grocer tosses you a fig mid-stride. You catch it in your mouth and chew like a victorious wild animal. There's beauty here, beneath the absurdity. This city, this square, it's alive in ways you don't quite understand until you're in the middle of it. The match is a living organism, pulsing with rage, joy, pride, and sweat. And snacks. Always snacks. You burst through a curtain someone's hung across a doorway and find yourself momentarily indoors. A bakery. You apologize, bow slightly to the baker's wife, who tosses flour at you and shoves you back outside with a wooden peel. She doesn't even stop kneading dough. Out again, the sunlight slams into your eyes like a second match. The ball's gone. Again. But you keep moving. That's the rule. Maybe the only one. You see a teammate gesturing frantically. He's pinned against a wheelbarrow by a man dressed in what looks like a scholar's robe. You lunge forward, shove the scholar gently but firmly, and help your teammate roll free. "You're my favorite," he wheezes. "Same," you grunt, mostly out of politeness. The ball reappears, bouncing toward the foot of a statue of the Madonna. You and 3 others dive for it. Someone gets elbowed. Someone else yells, "Forgive me, Holy Mother," and kicks the ball blindly away. It hits a street musician. His hurdy-gurdy lets out a sound that can only be described as accidental exorcism. He bows dramatically and keeps playing. You realize you haven't looked at the clock in ages. Not that there is one. Time in calcio is measured in exhaustion and public chaos. Suddenly, the crowd starts counting, backward. You don't know from what. Maybe it's a countdown. Maybe it's a ritual. Either way, the energy shifts. You can feel it in your ribs, which, thankfully, are still mostly aligned. You spot the ball again, and this time, it's rolling straight toward a vendor's spice rack. You dive for it, grab it mid-roll, and crash into a basket of dried lavender. You smell divine. You feel like a saint being martyred for a sport no one truly understands. You throw the ball before you can think. An overhead pass that somehow, miraculously, lands in your teammate's hands. He whoops, sprints, and hurls it toward the goal. Misses. Hits a tapestry. The tapestry falls on the goalie. The ball rolls in. A pause. Then, cheering. Confused. Wild. Half-drunken cheering. The tapestry goal counts. Apparently. Historians still debate whether goals obscured by falling religious decor are valid, you recall. But no one really argues when there's wine involved. You stumble back toward center field. Your legs are shaking. Your lungs burn. You might be bleeding. Hard to say from where. But you're still upright. And in this game, that's the closest thing to winning. The moment you scored, well, the moment the tapestry scored, you thought there might be some sort of brief glory. Maybe a minute of applause, a cool drink, a collective sigh. Nope. Instead, the opposing team reacts like you insulted their grandmothers, collectively, in iambic pentameter. The next few minutes are a blur of shouting, pointed fingers, a thrown turnip, and what looks like an impromptu judicial tribunal right there on the field. The judges, yes, the ones with wine-stained scrolls, are now huddled together under a parasol, arguing fiercely over whether textile interference voids the goal. One of them lifts the tapestry, sniffs it, and nods solemnly. Another tastes it. Why? Unclear. The crowd loves it. Half of them are laughing. The other half are throwing roses. One man is doing both. Eventually, the verdict is announced. The goal stands. It was divinely guided, one judge declares, and no one dares question his theology. So, the game continues. But now, it's personal. You can feel the mood shift like thunder in your chest. Your opponents are no longer playing. They're hunting. And you? You're suddenly the mascot for everything they hate. Underdogs, chaos, and maybe decorative wall art. Your teammates bless them, tighten ranks around you. The carpenter with the crooked nose pats your shoulder. Don't worry, he says. If they kill you, we'll avenge you before dinner. Comforting. You start moving again, warier now. The ball's gone missing, but that doesn't matter. People are moving, charging, pushing. It's less about direction now, and more about momentum. Like a dance choreographed by accident. You dodge left, narrowly avoiding a collision with a man dressed entirely in saffron yellow, who bellows like a church bell. His eyes are wild. His beard is braided. You wonder if he's even part of the match. You duck into a merchant stall for cover. It smells like cloves and desperation. The merchant just shrugs and hands you a piece of dried fruit. For luck, she says. You chew and peek around the canvas. The ball's reappeared. It's bouncing near the well. Yes, there's a well on the field. You bolt toward it, heart pounding. But just as you reach it, so does someone else. A young boy, with a dagger strapped to his belt, and the kind of intense gaze usually reserved for duels at dawn. His tunic is red. He's not even part of either team. Yet somehow, he's in possession of the ball. Let me through, you say gently. He narrows his eyes. Trade me. You blink. Trade you what? He points at the scarf, still tied to your arm, the one thrown from the balcony earlier. You hesitate. The scarf is soaked now, more rag than trophy. But he wants it, desperately. You untie it and hand it over. He hands you the ball. A weird sense of diplomacy washes over you. Historians still argue whether calcio was ever about the ball, or if it was just the city's theater, with its own scriptless negotiations and symbols of luck. You believe it now. Ball in hand, you run. It's not far to the goal, but between you and it stands a butcher, a scholar, a monk, and a woman with a broom who seems to have joined in just for a laugh. You brace yourself. The monk tries to bless you. The butcher swings. The broom whacks your ankle. You stumble, but lurch forward and toss the ball with the last of your strength. It arcs. It lands, just inside the net. Again, you collapse to your knees. A moment of silence. Then, absolute chaos, even louder than before. The crowd's reaction is seismic. You've scored twice now, or maybe just once and a half, depending on how tapestry math works. Either way, You're no longer just a player. You're a legend, a footnote in someone's retelling, a side character in a folk song that will definitely mispronounce your name. You feel hands lift you. You're carried ungracefully to the sideline. Your head lolls. Your vision swims. And that's when the healers show up. Well, they call themselves healers. Two old women appear with baskets full of herbs, oils, and terrifying enthusiasm. One starts rubbing your temples with garlic. The other cracks your knuckles like walnuts and says, "This will balance your humors." You don't argue. You just lie there and accept your fate. They begin chanting, not together, each one in her own rhythm, like two competing spells being cast with the same good intentions and none of the coordination. You close your eyes, not to sleep, just to escape. Your thoughts drift. You wonder, how did this all start? Calcio storico, after all, wasn't some fringe sideshow. It was endorsed by dukes, celebrated by poets, and occasionally condemned by popes. It reflected everything Renaissance cities feared and cherished: strength, spectacle, control through chaos. You are part of that chaos now. And as the second chant reaches a particularly nasal pitch, you realize something else. You might actually miss this when it ends. Try this. Close your eyes and picture yourself walking through the piazza in Florence 500 years ago. Can you see it? You're back on your feet, barely, thanks to the combined efforts of two healers, a stray dog licking your face, and a deep internal scream you keep politely suppressed. The match isn't over, not by a long shot, and judging by the looks exchanged on the field, the next phase might be even stranger. Someone hands you a small cup of fermented fig wine, which at this point seems less like a beverage and more like a required sedative. You sip it gratefully. It burns. You feel wiser, or at least number. You're led to the sideline for what you assume is a second halftime, but instead, everyone begins to gather in a tight circle at the center of the square. It's the ritual. You hadn't heard about this part, but the murmurs make it sound serious. A judge blows a curved horn. The players, bruised, battered, buzzed, stand in a ring, facing inward, heads bowed. Someone lights incense. Someone else tries to eat it before being gently redirected. You watch in mild disbelief as the entire square quiets. Then, one of the oldest players steps forward. His beard touches his chest. His nose looks like it's been broken by 6 different centuries. He begins to speak, not in Latin, but in a low, poetic Italian that even you can mostly understand. It's a speech about the game, its history, its dignity, its sheer ridiculous courage. He talks of ancestors who played during sieges, of goals scored in rain and snow, of teammates who died with boots on and pride intact. Today, he says, raising a wrinkled hand, we play for all of them. The crowd murmurs a solemn "Amen," then erupts into applause. You find yourself clapping too, not because you understand all of it, but because somehow, in your bruised ribs and scratched arms, it makes sense. You're not just playing a game. You're keeping something alive, a civic ritual, a chaotic prayer. Then someone farts loudly, and the moment evaporates. Back to the game. But this time, things feel different. There's more yelling, yes, but also more strategy. Your team moves like a pack now, less like a mob, more like an orchestra of very violent musicians. You fall into rhythm. The ball reappears, because of course it does, tossed from a third-story window by a woman with a cat perched on her shoulder. The crowd thanks her with applause. The cat bows. It's all very formal. The match resumes with a sprint. You run. Someone beside you slips on a fish. The merchant responsible shrugs. You reach the ball first and kick it forward. This time, not toward the goal, but into a gap between two opponents. It's a bluff. They follow it. Your teammate, the tailor with astonishing calves, sneaks through with the real play. It's beautiful. It's ballet and dirt. It's also interrupted by a vendor yelling, "Who wants charms?" You glance left and see him waving tiny talismans, carved from bone, shaped like boots, teeth, and oddly enough, ducks. You buy one on instinct, then immediately use it to knock a loose stone from your sandal. It works. You decide it's magical. You tuck it in your tunic. A lucky duck foot. Suddenly, the shouting changes tone. There's movement near the corner of the field. A group of women is approaching. Not spectators. Participants. They're not joining the match exactly, but they are changing it. One tosses a ribbon onto the field. Another places a scarf on the goalpost. A third throws a shoe at a player, then blows him a kiss. It's romantic, possibly threatening. Historians still argue whether these gestures were spontaneous acts of courtship, revenge, or symbolic support. You recall, as a ribbon lands on your head. You look up. She winks. You are chosen. This is not necessarily good. You play harder now, not out of vanity, but self-preservation. You've seen what happens to favorites. The crowd watches them more closely. So do the opponents. You duck. You dodge. You get tackled anyway. But you get up. You always get up. The match pushes on. Daylight begins to dim just slightly. The long shadows of the buildings stretch across the field like fingers. The air cools, but your body is still radiating heat like a kiln. You're not sure if that's from exertion or the fig wine. You make eye contact with a boy on the sidelines. He's wearing your scarf. He gives you a thumbs up. You're reminded, this game is spectacle, yes, but it's also memory. The kind that gets passed down, retold at dinners, sung in taverns, over-exaggerated in love letters, and you're a part of that now. The butcher with the scarred knuckles claps your shoulder. "One more push," he says. You nod. The crowd is humming again. A low, anticipatory murmur. Something's coming. Another goal? A final brawl? Maybe just the end. You tighten your laces, what's left of them, and run forward into the square again, ducking under a rope, over a crate, through the madness. Still here. Still standing. Still playing. Your legs feel like ropes soaked in vinegar. Each step is a negotiation. Each breath feels like it's been passed through a furnace. But you keep moving, because the crowd is roaring again, and something is happening at the far end of the field. You squint through the dust and the madness, and there it is. The ball, wedged under a wooden cart that wasn't there a minute ago. The cart is unmanned, loaded with baskets of apples, a few bundles of herbs, and, oddly, a single ceramic chamber pot. It looks like it belongs to someone who's definitely not aware their livelihood is now part of a historic street brawl. You sprint, or something like it. A kind of ragged diagonal lurch that qualifies as running only in Renaissance Florence. A teammate sees you and points. "It's yours." You dive, hands first. There's a shout from somewhere. "Watch the fruit." As the cart shifts slightly, you grab the ball, knocking over a bunch of apples, which scatter dramatically across the square. One rolls under the judge's chair. He doesn't flinch. He's asleep again. As you rise, ball in hand, you're immediately surrounded. 3 opponents block your path. One of them cracks his neck in a way that should be illegal. Another mutters a prayer. The third simply grins and says, "Don't worry, we only need the ball. Your bones can stay." You pivot. There's only one way out, through a narrow gap between two fencing poles. You make a break for it, arms tucked, ball tight against your ribs. It works, for a second. Then you're grabbed from behind. You twist. You fall. And now, you're on your back, with one man trying to pin your arm while another reaches for the ball. This is where the Renaissance comes in. You bite down, not on them, but on your pride. And you let go of the ball. Roll it backward with your foot, right into your teammate's path. He doesn't hesitate, picks it up, darts forward like a man possessed. Your sacrifice isn't in vain. The crowd howls. A whistle, maybe not official, maybe just someone excited, blows. You try to sit up but settle for groaning. The referee judges, if we're still calling them that, gather again. This time, with cheese. They seem to be arguing over who has the best wheel, not the best play. One holds up a wedge. Everyone nods. Debate resolved. You're pulled up by someone, maybe a player, maybe a fan. At this point, the boundary between roles has fully dissolved. That's when you hear it, singing again. But this time, not the balcony hymn. This is from the field. The players, your team, are singing. Not loudly, not in tune. But it's there, under their breath, rhythmic, like a battle chant from a tavern opera. A mix of Latin phrases, kitchen slang, and made-up words. It's ridiculous. It's inspiring. You join in, off-key, proudly. This is your life now. You push forward again, limping but determined. A vendor tosses you a ribbon. You tie it around your wrist. Someone else throws a sprig of rosemary. You tuck it behind your ear. Now you smell like a walking casserole. And somehow, that feels like armor. You spot a woman in the front row, holding a sign. It simply says, "Do it for the goats." You're not sure what that means. You take it personally anyway. Back in the fray, you help intercept a charge. Two players slam into you, and you brace, absorbing the hit like a very sore wall. They bounce off. You laugh. Pain is funny now. Or maybe it's the wine. A child yells your name. You turn, stunned. It's the boy with your scarf. He's got his arms raised like you're a hero in a story he'll tell for years. You nod, and then get body checked so hard you forget your own birth year. But even that doesn't matter, because when you sit up, yes, again, you see something incredible. The ball's in the air, sailing. It arcs over the field like a comet made of stitched pigskin and pure willpower. You watch as it lands, right into the goal. A clean one. No tapestries, no goats, no bribery. Just ball, net, history. Silence falls. Then pandemonium. The square explodes with cheers. Players fall to their knees. Judges throw cheese into the crowd. Someone faints dramatically near a sausage cart. You lie back on the ground and stare at the sky. You've lost track of the score. No one seems to care. The match may not even have a winner. Or it might be declared a draw because the baker's cousin is marrying into the judge's family. But you know one thing. You survived another play. And that's the only rule that seems to matter. You lie there for a moment longer, flat on your back, arms stretched out like a Renaissance martyr who just made peace with his absurd, fig wine-soaked fate. Around you, the chaos simmers. Laughter, shouting, a loud thwack as someone accidentally slaps a chicken. Normal match things. You sit up, groaning, and spot the ball again, already rolling into another skirmish. At this point, the ball might as well be a character, equal parts protagonist and scapegoat. It's chased, thrown, dropped, and worshipped, but never respected. A player you haven't seen before, a wiry guy with a missing eyebrow and a leather apron, chases it like a man chasing redemption. He's fast, too fast. You wonder if he's been pacing himself all match just to show off now. And just like that, the match abandons structure again. The ball disappears into a knot of shouting bodies. You edge closer, trying to keep a low profile, which is difficult when you smell like bruised basil and whatever potion the healers rubbed into your neck earlier. It's begun to tingle, or burn, or both. Then without warning, the game breaks apart. Not physically, but emotionally. Because now comes the arguing phase. You'd heard rumors of this. The game within the game. It usually starts when everyone's too tired to keep fighting, but too proud to admit it. It starts with finger pointing, then shouting, then philosophical disputes over whether the ball was truly in or whether truth itself is an illusion shaped by dust and wine. A player from your team waves a spoon accusingly. "He sat on the ball," he yells. "Only because your guy threw it at my face," someone counters. The judges pretend to listen. One is carving a piece of hard cheese with a dagger. Another is feeding a pigeon. The third appears to be writing poetry about how time is a flat circle and everyone is bleeding. You stand awkwardly near the edge, watching, waiting. Then a woman from the crowd storms the field. She's elderly, wearing 17 shawls and wielding a ladle. She walks right up to the players mid-argument and smacks both of them on the head. Everyone freezes. Then slowly, they nod. The argument ends. Apparently, ladle diplomacy works where centuries of rules don't. You move back toward the makeshift center of the square. The sun is dipping now, casting a soft golden glow that almost makes the scene look romantic. If you ignore the blood, the mud, and the guy with two black eyes humming to himself while chewing on a radish. The ball is returned, by a small child naturally. She waddles in, deposits it reverently on the ground, and toddles back to the sideline like she's just delivered a royal decree. The players form a loose circle again, breathing hard, arms hanging like wilted banners. The crowd has quieted slightly, but they're still watching, always watching. And now comes the strangest part, the ball disappearance phase. No one knows where it goes. The ball is kicked, or perhaps intentionally hidden during the last play, and then forgotten entirely. What happens next? Everyone forgets the ball. People start tackling each other anyway. It becomes, once again, not about goals, but grudges. You witness a man leap onto someone else simply because he's been smiling too much. Another pair start slap fighting over a spilled bottle of wine. One man punches a scarecrow someone left in the corner. No one stops him. You're caught in the fray again, this time defending yourself not from attacks, but from hugs. Post-match camaraderie begins early for a few overly affectionate teammates. One of them kisses your cheek and says, "Even if we lose, we felt it." You nod, uncertain whether that's a compliment or a warning. Then, from the far edge of the field, a woman calls out, "Where's the ball?" Everyone pauses. The fighting slows. The chants hush. Even the pigeons stop flapping. And you realize no one knows. The game continues for another 5 minutes without it. You watch as a group of players continue to grapple, fully convinced the ball is somewhere beneath them. One man swears he felt it. Another insists it was a dream. Someone suggests maybe he's the ball now. That sparks a brief philosophical aside. Historians still debate whether these ball-less brawls were intentional rituals or just side effects of too much sun and pride, you recall, as a man begins shouting at a hat. Eventually, a judge strolls in and gently raises both arms. "It's over," he declares. "No final goal, no countdown, just consensus." The crowd bursts into mixed applause and sobbing. A goat bleats in approval. You exhale, knees trembling, as you lean against a broken barrel. The game is done. The chaos is cooling. The dust is settling. And the ball? Still missing. But everyone agrees. That was calcio. And it was beautiful. You don't remember sitting down, but somehow you're on a crate with half a cheese wheel in your lap and a jug of something that might be wine, vinegar, or both cradled against your chest like a newborn. Your tunic is torn, your hair matted with what smells like fig syrup, and someone's draped a banner over your shoulders like a cape. You are no longer a player. You are a relic. Around you, the square begins to shift moods. No longer a battlefield. It's transforming into a festival. Players limp across the dirt toward the edge of the piazza, where townsfolk greet them with hugs, roasted chestnuts, and slightly judgmental nods. You're approached by a woman who presses a chunk of honeycomb into your hand. She doesn't say anything, just pats your cheek and vanishes into the crowd. You chew slowly, dazed, eyes half-lidded as you watch the aftermath. The scoreboard, if you can call it that, is a wooden slate propped against a wine barrel, and nobody seems particularly interested in it. It reads something like, "Blue team, 2-ish, red team, who cares?" Someone's drawn a smiling pig beside it. The judges, who you now recognize as part-time actors and full-time cheese enthusiasts, declare the match a triumph of spirit over reason. They then pass around a loaf of bread the size of a small horse and break it into chunks to share. One of them stands on a crate and begins reciting poetry, possibly original, possibly lifted from a very dramatic laundry list. You only catch bits. And then the ball, like truth, rolled where none expected. Someone claps. Someone else throws a sandal. Nearby, a musician with one arm and 3 strings begins plucking out a soft tune. The crowd hushes instinctively. You don't know the song, but it feels ancient, slow, like it was written by bruises themselves. You close your eyes, the music wrapping around you like smoke. Your body hurts, but in the way that tells you you've earned something. You're no hero, but today, you weren't just a bystander in history. You hear laughter. It's Bruno, the brick-chested butcher from earlier, now seated on a stack of sacks, regaling children with exaggerated tales of the day I fought a ghost disguised as a tailor. The children squeal. One climbs into his lap. He lets them touch his bruised nose like it's a sacred relic. And just to his right, the elderly ladle-wielding woman is now accepting hugs and possibly bribes. You're not sure if she's someone's grandmother or a minor deity, but either way, she seems satisfied with the day's events. Across the square, a few players from both teams sit together, sharing dried fruit and wine, pointing at their bruises like medals. One lifts his tunic to reveal an imprint of someone's sandal on his ribs. They all applaud. You take another sip of your mystery drink. It's stronger now. Or maybe you're just weaker. A child tugs at your sleeve. Are you the one who scored the floating goal? You smile, nodding slowly. One of them. She hands you a ribbon and runs off. You stare at it for a moment. It's simple. Red silk, frayed at one end. Probably meant for something else entirely. But right now, it's a trophy. A little piece of proof that you were part of the madness. The music, the muscle memory of this city. Someone starts singing again. This time, it's the Tailors Guild. The tune is ridiculous. The lyrics are worse. It's all about losing shoes in honorable combat. You join in anyway. Off-key, exhausted, alive. Historians still argue whether post-match festivities like this were official or just tolerated distractions. You remember, as a goat wanders past with a blue ribbon tied to its horn. It doesn't matter. What matters is that no one leaves angry. The match is over, but the story lingers, smudged into the cobbles, caught in the scent of rosemary and sweat, echoing in the laughter of old players with bad knees and better memories. Your body aches in every language, but your heart, it's humming. You survived a match of Renaissance football, and somehow that feels like surviving the Renaissance itself. The sun is kissing the rooftops now, setting the terracotta tiles ablaze with gold as the square enters its next phase, the feast. The game may be over, but the ritual continues, and no part of calcio storico is as universally loved or fiercely competitive as the post-match table. Long wooden benches appear, as if conjured from thin air. Lanterns are lit. Candles float in shallow bowls. Somewhere, a musician tunes a viola da gamba, though the strings sound like they've seen as much action as your knees. You limp toward the food, pulled by instinct more than conscious choice. You haven't eaten since that mysterious fig and possibly apothecary-made charm. Your stomach growls like it's been participating in a match of its own. First, the meats: spit roasted boar, sausages coiled like ropes, trays of cured cuts, and olives glistening with oil. Next, the breads: flat, fluffy, laced with rosemary and cracked salt. And then, the cheeses. Oh God, the cheeses. Wheels of pecorino stacked like game tokens, smoked rounds with walnut crusts, soft wedges that threaten to collapse under their own luxurious weight. A woman sees your face and wordlessly hands you a slice of something sharp, buttery, and transformative. You nod, tears welling. It's not the cheese, it's the moment. Beside you, players from both teams toast with mugs that clang too loudly. One shouts, "To broken ribs and better friendships." Another replies, "To bruises that tell better stories than medals." A third just shouts, "Bread," and receives thunderous applause. You ease onto a bench. Across from you is one of the opponents who tackled you hardest. Twice. You raise your mug. He raises his. The toast is silent, mutual, human. It's here you see the magic of calcio most clearly. Not in the fight, but in the feast. In this wide, open-air communion of scarred bodies and softened hearts. Historians still argue whether the post-match meal was the true heart of the tradition, or just the reward for surviving it. But looking around, it's hard not to believe it was both. The mayor appears, wine-stained and red-faced, holding a roasted squash like a trophy. He gives a speech no one listens to, then bites into it with such gusto that the crowd erupts into celebratory barking. You bark too. It seems right. A child tugs at your sleeve. Did you see the goat dance? You blink. The what? She points toward the fountain. There it is. The same goat from earlier, now decorated with streamers, doing something vaguely resembling rhythmic hopping. A man plays a tiny flute beside it. A group claps in time. Florence, you realize, is full of surprises. Desserts arrive next. Ricotta tarts with fig jam, honey-drizzled dough balls, a cake shaped like a football. Someone presents it to the judge who slept through half the match. He wakes up, sniffs it, and declares, "This counts as a goal." The crowd cheers. Beside you, a potter sketches the day's highlights into a clay tile, a crude stick figure kicking a ball, another one flying through the air, a third with exaggerated tears. "For my shop," she says, "people love funny pain." You nod. Funny pain's the only kind worth remembering. A lute strikes up a tune, and before you can protest, someone grabs your hand and pulls you up. A dance forms, rough, joyful, mostly hopping. You sway, off balance, nearly trip on your own foot, and laugh until you wheeze. The square spins with life. Players dance with vendors. Judges nap under tables. Children chase each other with ribbons. And somewhere, that goat is now wearing a crown made of bread crust. The food dwindles. The laughter softens, but the warmth lingers. You sink back onto the bench, full and content in a way that's hard to explain. You came to play a game. You walked away with bruises, yes, but also 1,000 small stories etched into your bones. This wasn't a match. It was a memory, made in real time, to be retold in exaggerated detail under starry skies and over full glasses. And in the heart of it all, you, still breathing, still aching, still part of Florence's favorite madness. Try this. Close your eyes and picture yourself walking through the piazza in Florence 500 years ago. Can you see it? The feast begins to fade like a dream, nearing its final chapter. Slower movements, quieter voices, longer shadows creeping across the square. The music continues, but now it's softer, like the city itself is humming a lullaby to soothe its tired limbs. You recline against a barrel, sipping the last of something sweet and golden. It might be mead, it might be juice, it might be olive oil. You're too tired to care. Everything tastes like victory now. All around you, players compare wounds, like nobles compare titles. "This one," a smith says proudly, pulling up his sleeve, "was from the cobbler with the mean left elbow." "And this," says a younger player, pointing to a bruise that wraps around his side like ivy, "was from when I tried to kiss the baker's niece and score a goal at the same time." The stories grow taller with each telling. A 2-minute scuffle becomes an epic duel. A minor trip becomes a mid-air somersault. The man who briefly left the field to vomit behind a fruit cart. Now he's the one who sprinted the length of the piazza with a broken foot and a loaf of bread clenched in his teeth. No one corrects anyone. Because in calcio storico, the truth is less important than the legend. Someone hands you a piece of charcoal and a bit of canvas. "Draw yours," they say. You hesitate, then sketch a crude stick figure, bruised and grinning, holding a ball in one hand and a banner in the other. The artist beside you squints at it, nods seriously, and says, "Yes, very postmodern." A woman walks by, offering ribbons for bruises, green for a clean tackle, blue for a goal, red for surviving a full face plant. You collect all three. You pin them to your chest like battlefield honors. Across the square, a group of older players gathers near the edge of the fountain. Their movements are slow, ceremonial. One steps forward, barefoot, gray-bearded, missing 2 fingers, and calls for silence. Everyone obeys. It's time for the closing rite. The elder lifts a goblet and says, "To the players who came before us, who ran these stones, bled in this dust, and laughed at pain." The crowd murmurs, "To them." He raises the goblet again. "To those who play today, who remind us that sport is more than rules and more than pride." "To us," the players echo. "And to those who will play after we are long gone." A child raises their wooden cup. "To me." The crowd erupts in laughter. The goblet is poured onto the stones in a final offering. The square falls still. And then, one by one, people begin to drift toward the edges. Not leaving, just easing into the evening. You stand, stiff, aching, but still capable, and take a slow lap around the field. You pass the spot where you first got knocked down, the corner where the tapestry fell, the fountain that was both sacred and storage. And at the very edge, you find your scarf, snagged on a splinter of the wooden goal frame. You take it back. As you turn, the tailor catches your eye. He limps over, claps a hand on your shoulder, and says, "You did well, Half-Tooth." You blink. What? That's your name now, Half-Tooth, because you showed up with a full set and finished with a story. You touch your mouth, all teeth intact, but you don't correct him. Half-Tooth. Why not? Nicknames in calcio aren't insults. They're honors. Proof that you mattered in the mayhem. You walk away slowly, scarf tied around your arm, ribbons flapping on your tunic, nickname echoing in your head like a bell struck on warm iron. You might never play again, or maybe you will. But either way, this day, this bruised, beautiful, brutal ballet will stay with you. And next time, someone talks about how tough modern athletes are, how civilized games have become, you'll just smile and say, "Try Renaissance football." Then you'll show them the ribbons. The piazza is nearly empty now. The festive roar faded into quiet laughter and the gentle scraping of brooms as townsfolk sweep aside the wreckage. Orange peels, olive pits, torn fabric, and what might be the remains of a sandal duel. Overhead, the sky purples into twilight, its color bleeding into the edges of Florence's tired rooftops. You linger, not because you're lost, but because you don't want to leave. There's something sacred about the quiet after the storm, a kind of peace only earned through exhaustion, community, and at least one knee to the face. You pass a group of spectators slowly dismantling the wooden goal frame, chatting about next year's teams as casually as one might discuss the weather. A boy sketches the match from memory on a crumpled piece of parchment. His drawing includes a goat, a fire, and you kicking the ball while apparently riding a wine barrel. It's perfect. You step closer and ask, "Did I really look that cool?" He shrugs. "My uncle said you almost cried when you got tackled." Fair. You pat him on the head anyway. History isn't about accuracy. It's about the retelling. Not far off, two older women sit perched on a bench, still knitting, still gossiping. One points at your limp and says, "That's the third one today. I told you, full moons always make them clumsier." The other nods gravely, looping red yarn through her needles. "But did you see the way he ducked that flying loaf? Elegant." You give them a small bow. They approve. This, you think, is the strange alchemy of calcio storico. A sport where your worth isn't defined by points, stats, or medals. It's measured in moments, tiny, specific, sometimes stupid, woven together into a tapestry as chaotic and vibrant as the city itself. A taverna nearby throws open its shutters. Someone shouts, "Half price for anyone still bleeding." Another responds, "Does bruised ego count?" You consider it, but instead, you drift along the edges of the square, watching the fading light play against the ancient stones. And then you notice something. A small crowd has gathered at the base of a statue. The statue isn't famous. No marble masterpiece, no heroic knight. Just a simple stone figure, chipped and weathered, with a ball at its feet and a broken nose that makes you feel oddly seen. There's a plaque, The letters are worn, but you can still read them. To those who played, not for glory, but for the joy of the chaos. Someone's placed flowers at the base, a slice of bread, a ribbon. You smile. Historians still argue whether this statue was ever meant as a player's tribute, or just a quirky bit of civic art that stuck around, you recall. But right now, you believe it's exactly where it should be. You take off your scarf, the same one tossed from a balcony hours ago when your lungs were still working properly, and you place it gently at the statue's feet. A man behind you says softly, "Nice game." You turn. It's the scholar, the one who tackled you. He's wearing a black eye and a proud grin. "You too," you say. He nods, then hands you a roll. "For the road. From the baker's daughter. Says you ran like a drunk squirrel, but she was impressed." High praise. You sit beside the statue and eat slowly, letting the bread soften on your tongue, letting your body relax into stillness. The city is quieter now. A few bells ring in the distance. The breeze shifts, carrying the scent of warm brick, wine, and rosemary. You think about the game. Not just this match, but all the ones that came before it. Centuries of clumsy tackles, brilliant feints, and scandalous love notes passed during corner plays. All of it alive, still breathing, in the square beneath your aching feet. And you're part of that now. A flicker of torchlight dances across the worn stone. Your name might never be carved in marble, but your ribbon's on that statue. Your bruises are in the city's memory. And somewhere in the alleys of Florence, a goat probably still remembers you. The stars are beginning to show now. First one, then three, then a soft dusting of silver scattered across the navy sky, like flowers spilled over a baker's counter. You watch them emerge slowly as the last echoes of the day fade into soft street sounds. Carts creaking homeward, a lute playing faintly behind a shutter, the occasional drunken burst of laughter from a nearby alley. You wander toward the edge of the square, your limbs protesting every step, your tunic still damp with sweat and honor. You pass a woman sweeping petals off her doorstep. She looks up and says, "You played well, stranger." You smile. "Didn't score." She chuckles. "Didn't die. That's better." And she's not wrong. You step around a puddle that wasn't there this morning and glance back at the piazza. No longer a battlefield, no longer a feast hall. Now it's just a square again. Cracked stone, dim lanterns, quiet ghosts. Your team is still visible, scattered like leaves across benches and stoops. Some sleep, some eat. Some simply sit and stare like philosophers who've just emerged from a brawl. Across the way, the red team does the same. There's no hostility now, just fatigue and mutual respect. And then, something unexpected. A boy, maybe 10 years old, steps into the center of the square with a small ball under his arm. He wears a too-big tunic and no shoes. He places the ball down gently, then backs up, looks around. He kicks. The ball rolls halfway before bumping into a loose stone and toppling onto its side. A cheer erupts from both sides of the square. Laughter, applause, a few exaggerated gasps. Someone throws a coin. Another whistles like it was the goal of the century. And just like that, the game begins again. Not officially, not violently, just play. A group of children runs into the square, barefoot, wild, full of joy. They chase the ball in the torchlight, giggling, falling, spinning with the energy of a world untouched by bruises. You lean against a post and watch. A teammate joins you, holding a small clay cup. He offers it. Sweet wine, barely fermented. For sore teeth, you sip. It tastes like candied herbs, and sunburnt grapes. You nod, grateful. They say the first calcio match was played to distract the city from war, he murmurs. Or plague, or taxes. Depends who you ask. You raise an eyebrow. Did it work? He shrugs. We're still here, aren't we? The two of you fall into a companionable silence, watching the children weave through old footprints and forgotten ribbons. They don't know the rules. They make their own. No scores, no tackles, just laughter and pretend goals. Historians still argue whether calcio was meant for civic pride or controlled chaos, you think. But watching the children, you realize the point might have been even simpler. Joy. A street game with sacred bones. A ritual dressed up in bruises. A living myth disguised as sport. The boy who kicked the ball first runs over to you, breathless. Did you play today? You nod. He looks you up and down. Did you win? You think about it. About the food, the bruises, the scarf, the goat, the goal, the dancing, the nicknames, the ribbons, the statue. I survived, you say? He nods gravely, like that's the only answer that ever mattered. Then he runs off, shouting something about invisible dragons on defense. You chuckle and take one last look at the square, now transformed again. No longer a theater of war or celebration, but a cradle of future chaos, of future players. And in that moment, the ache in your ribs dulls, the soreness in your calves eases, and the noise of the world softens to a whisper. You walk away slowly, footsteps light despite the pain, head filled with laughter and light and dust. And behind you, the game continues, reborn as it always does, in every shadowed square, in every bruised legend, and every child who ever looked at a ball and saw not rules, but possibility. Morning light seeps through your eyelids like honey, and when you open them, you're still in the piazza, yet not. The stones look cleaner, the air crisper, and overhead hangs a banner printed in modern ink. Florence, Calcio, Storico reenactment, June 24. For a long, drowsy heartbeat, you wonder whether last night's bruises have time-warped you forward a few centuries, or if the fig wine is staging an encore performance in your bloodstream. You stand, wobbling. A pigeon wearing a plastic identification band struts past, utterly unimpressed. Tourists in sun hats are already clustering near the fountain where you once face-planted. One snaps a photo and says, "Can you imagine playing soccer on these cobbles?" You smile a secret smile. Soccer, indeed. A guide's voice drifts over the square, mic'd and melodic. Each June, teams from the city's 4 historic quarters suit up in traditional colors, blue, red, white, and green, and revive the brutal pageant for the Feast of San Giovanni. Mainstream fact delivered, as fresh as the espresso scent wafting from the cafe that now occupies yesterday's sausage stall. You rub your ribs out of reflex. History may repeat, but bruises abide. Painted wooden stands ring the piazza, prefabricated, not flung together by panicked merchants. You trace a finger along one, feeling machine-smoothed pine where splintered carts once stood. A volunteer in a neon vest offers you a glossy program. On the cover, 4 hulking athletes in 15th century tights, flexing like comic book gladiators. Inside, you spot a quirky tidbit. Apparently, the white team's captain also moonlights as a professional pastry chef. His pre-game ritual is icing cannoli for good luck. You make a mental note. Victory tastes like sugar. A soft breeze carries faint chanting. Distant players warming up, rolling shoulders, shadow boxing. Their tattoos are modern, but the swagger is identical. Beyond them, The cathedral's facade gleams. Same marble, different century. The past is everywhere, but politely fenced off, like a museum exhibit that occasionally punches back. Historians still argue whether these reenactments honor tradition or simply commodify chaos, the guide intones, feeding earbuds across language barriers. You chuckle. Yesterday, you were the chaos, uncommodified, unpaid, and decidedly uninsured. You stroll toward a souvenir kiosk. No goats today, only plush replicas wearing tiny colored tunics. One stares at you with stitched eyes. You buy it anyway. Call it therapy. A cluster of reenactors jogs by, muscles gleaming, GoPro strapped to someone's forehead. You catch snippets of Florentine dialect peppered with modern Italian and the occasional bro. They pause to stretch beside the well where you once negotiated for a red scarf. One ties a fitness tracker around his bicep. Cardio meets carnage. Progress. A security officer warns tourists, keep behind barriers. Players may leave the field unexpectedly. You snort. Understatement of the millennium. A bell tolls. Electronic amplification replacing yesterday's shaky handbell. Spectators shuffle to their seats. Selfie sticks raised like medieval pikes. Drone cameras buzz overhead. Digital dragonflies capturing what fresco painters once immortalized in tempera. You lean on a railing, breath catching as the teams march in, drums thundering. Costumes are pristine, no blood, yet. Faces painted, chests bare, each quarter chanting its anthem. Crowds roar, but it's a tamed roar, cushioned by smartphone screens and liability waivers. Still, your pulse quickens. Muscle memory or ghost memory. First clash. Bodies collide, dust rises, and for half a heartbeat you smell last night's rosemary. Hear the ladle crack across squabbling skulls. A player is flipped. The medics sprint in fluorescent jackets, not beer-stained tunics. He grins for the broadcast before rejoining the scrum. You grin too, because some things never change. The tourist beside you gasps, "Are they allowed to punch?" You shrug. Allowed? Debatable. Inevitable? Absolutely. During a lull, the PA blares trivia. Did you know Michelangelo supposedly trained with calcianti to sculpt more realistic torsos? Another mainstream nugget, tossed like free bread to the hungry crowd. You file it away, mostly to brag at dinner parties. The sun arcs higher. Sweat slicks the players' shoulders, and the game's rhythm spirals into that familiar half-sport, half-riot choreography. You catch yourself coaching under your breath. Elbow up, collarbone open. Echoes of the carpenter's advice. A joke slips out loud. Walk it off, in Latin. A nearby teenager laughs, having no idea you're quoting a Renaissance goalie physician. Mid-match, a white team striker attempts a bicycle kick, misses, and lands sprawled like a Renaissance cherub who's lost his cloud. You mutter, "That's gonna require cheese and a poem." Second joke of the day. A grandpa next to you wheezes approval. Moments later, a green team baker, yes, the cannoli king, scores a thunderous goal. Powdered sugar puffs from his waistband like celebratory smoke. Third joke writes itself. Best use of confectionery since someone weaponized a salami. You whisper it. A nearby influencer repeats it to her followers. Viral within minutes, probably. Crowd erupts. Students waving scarves. Retirees clanging souvenir cowbells. A drone descending for a hero shot. Yet through the noise, you hear faint, older cheers, layered beneath like harmony. Merchants, nobles, goats, ghosts. The plaza remembers. A hush falls for a penalty. One player kneels, tracing a cross on the dust. Superstition or strategy? Hard to say. Historians still argue whether religious gestures were genuine piety or pre-game psychology, the PA notes. You nod, rubbing the spot where a ribbon once branded your skin. Game ends in jubilation. Scoreboard digital, but confusion timeless. Friends and rivals embrace. EMTs distribute ice packs. A little girl in plastic armor tugs a player's shorts, asks for a selfie. He obliges, winking through a fresh sheener. Somewhere, the spirit of Halftooth laughs approval. Evening settles, stands empty. Workers sweep. You linger, fingertips grazing the same ancient stones. For a moment, you glimpse spectral silhouettes. Bruno, the butcher flexing, the elder pouring wine onto the ground, the ladle lady waving her divine cookware. You think you smell fig wine? Hear a goat bleat. You whisper thanks. To the square, the game, the centuries that kept it breathing. You tuck the plush goat under your arm, step away into Florentine twilight. One last ribbon fluttering from your pocket like a comet tail of bygone madness. You walk along the edge of the square one last time. The game is over. The crowd is gone. But the cobblestones still hum with memory. Not just yours, though your knees, your ribs, and your oddly tender left ear all have plenty to say. But the memories of hundreds of matches, real and reenacted, ancient and half imagined. You pass the statue again, the one with the chipped nose and the ball at its feet. Your scarf is gone now. Someone else must have taken it. You don't mind. That's the point. Stories pass hands, just like the ball did. You sit for a moment on a bench that's still warm from the sun. A couple strolls by, arguing cheerfully in Italian about whether the red team got cheated. A boy kicks a water bottle down the street like it's sacred. And behind you, a cafe radio plays something jazzy, but it still somehow matches the beat of your pulse. You exhale. No cheering now, no drums. Just the creak of shutters and the rustle of leaves in the gutters. You think back to that first moment, being shoved into a tunic, seeing the dust rise, smelling sweat and sausage in the same breath. The panic, the pain, the impossible elation of scoring a goal by mistake. And the scarf, always the scarf. You weren't meant to win. You weren't even meant to finish. But you did. You walked into a story that didn't belong to you. And now, you're part of it. Stitched in like a patch on a tunic. A line in a future exaggeration. You're not sure if it changed you, but you know you won't forget it. So, you stand. And you leave the square behind. Not like someone escaping, but like someone stepping off stage after the curtains drop. It's quiet now. Just the stone underfoot. And the stars. And now, as we drift away from the dust of the square and into the hush of night, you let yourself slow. Your breath softens. Your shoulders, sore and sun-warmed, begin to loosen as the world around you fades to the soft rhythm of your pulse. You're no longer running, no longer bracing for impact or watching for elbows. You're lying still now, wrapped in quiet, cushioned by memory. The echoes of the crowd are long gone. What remains is the warmth of the evening air, the steady tick of an unseen clock, the creak of a shutter somewhere far off, the faintest scent of rosemary. The sounds become smaller, duller, the kind of sounds that don't wake you. They welcome you in. A ribbon flutters somewhere in the breeze. A bell tolls softly, far away. And the ball, maybe it's still rolling, slow and steady, through the corners of the city. Or maybe it stopped long ago, resting like your body is now, in that gentle in-between where dreams start. You did well, player. You ran. You fell. You rose. You laughed through your bruises and left a story behind you. whether anyone tells it or not. So now, let your breath grow deeper. Let your jaw unclench, your limbs sink heavier into your bed. You don't need to move anymore. You don't need to remember the score. Let the match dissolve behind your closed eyes. Let the square dimension. Let the noise melt away into that wide, star-dotted silence. Because the night is long, the city is still. And you're safe now. You've played your part, and you've earned your rest. Sleep well, traveler of the Renaissance. The story's over. You can let go. Even a small like from you. It's like a little candle in the dark. It helps me keep telling these stories.